They said it was a diffraction artifact, a wound of optics and processing, a line that should have collapsed when we re-ran the pipeline. They wrote it off as cosmic rays and persistence. I swore I could hear it hum. I'm only telling you this because you were the last person who looked me in the eye and asked why my hands shook when the screens went dark. You were the one who held the door to the lab when I thought the corridor might bend and keep me in there forever. I've kept the fragments in a steel box in my head for 2 years, and every time I sleep, the seam opens again, and the galaxy bleeds across the drywall of my dreams like a long, straight bruise. I don't need you to believe me. I need you to understand why I can't stay quiet anymore. I'm not the first person you'd expect to confess something like this. I'm a calibrations lead, boring, precise, invisible, trained to iron the wrinkles out of truth until the numbers behave. 29 years now of tracking noise, building flats and bad pixel masks, learning the heat in a bench by how it makes the air taste behind your teeth. I came up through the ground segment, the unglamorous back end of the James Webb Telescope discovery chain, where we collect the light like rainwater in quiet cisterns and test it for poison. Protocol has always been my religion. Or it was, until the scar. It's strange to think how ordinary that night began. August. Dry heat pressing at the edges of the building like a tired palm. The Miri pipeline had coughed earlier, and I'd been at the terminal since afternoon, coaxing it back into rhythm. On a side monitor, a live stack from NearCam was chewing through a new field, something the cosmologists wanted for a dark matter study. A pretty little galaxy with a fat lensing halo and child-bright knots along its arms. You've seen 1,000 of them. But this one had that ring, like a dropped gold coin around a throat. I watched the frames lay down like glass plates, one on another, and on the 5th, a hairline appeared across the galaxy's face. I leaned in. I know a cosmic ray strike when I see one. It flares. It has a rash of angles. This was different. It ran straight as a surveyor's wire from halo to halo, a ruled line of absence. Not dark, not bright. The color of a word the image didn't have. I tagged it for automatic rejection, told the code to re-weight the pixels, re-register, re-everything, and the line suppressed as expected. Then the 6th frame came in. You ever hear something with your eyes? That was how it felt. Like the room made a single, careful note just at the edge of hearing. The line was there again, a fraction offset, as if the galaxy had moved, only nothing else moved. The diffraction spikes stayed married to their stars. The hot pixels sang their same quiet songs. But the scar shifted, like a knife tested against skin. I pulled the raw telemetry. Not the groomed, the raw, the kind with the machine breath still in it. The scar wasn't in the numbers. It was in the light. I stood up too fast, and the chair went back and hit the cabinet with a metal bark. You know that sound. You came over and asked if I wanted water. I told you I was fine. I was not fine. The 7th frame had the line again, thicker. It was swollen. Suddenly, all the old rumors I laughed at woke up in my chest like dogs. The Antarctica secret base, the placeholder budget lines, the private mirrors shipped in crates marked as marine hydrology equipment. The off-books briefings where the slide deck names had black paint under them. Area 51 experiment chatter that came through old friends still working the Nevada vetting lines. You know how it is in our world. Truth is always a hallway you aren't supposed to walk down, and officious little signs try to send you back to the lobby. I did the one thing I wasn't supposed to do. I bypassed the internal triage queue and sent a low-level alert to an older server, the one that keeps the weird stuff like a museum attic. It's where the unclassifiable anomalies sit and wait for a name. I used the tag we reserve for intelligent contamination, something that might have been touched by human hands, intentionally or not. It's a nuclear tag. It wakes up people who don't work for us. 15 minutes later, a separate window blinked awake on my screen, and text scrolled in a font I hadn't seen before. It told me to stop all automated processing on the NIRCam field, to mirror the raw frames to a dead-end point via a one-time pad, and to wait for a call. You know that scissor sound when a line closes on a secure channel? It sounds like air learning a new trick. That call had it. A voice without a region asked me to describe the line, not the numbers. They wanted my body in it. The smell, the taste, the tone. I told them the room hummed at the edge of hearing. I told them the scar felt like a ruler somebody pressed across a cloud. I said it was both too straight and too alive. They asked me if I was religious. Then they asked if I knew what the Atlas designation meant. I said the Atlas asteroid impact projections were classified under a different program, the one they never named directly, the one that kept transit windows and Delta V budgets for things that didn't officially exist. I said the Atlas threads were rumor. They told me to meet them in Denver under a name I hadn't used in 14 years. When you work this long on the whisper end of astronomy, you collect certain folklores. The first is that not all satellites are honest. The second is that Antarctica is not only ice. The third is that Area 51 never retired. It moved sideways. At the airport, the man with the voice and the no region wore the kind of face that turns into every other face the moment you stop looking at it. He handed me a badge with a falcon and a black bar, where the project name should be. The elevator in the garage went down when the numbers said it didn't. The key card reader lit green for blank plastic. They took me to a room that looked like a chapel for failed instruments. In the front, a wall-sized display rotated the galaxy from my frames, with the scar laid over it like a healed cut that forgot to fade. The man asked me to stand close, to look not at the line but at the places it entered and exited the halo. He asked me to tell him if anything in me recognized the pattern. When I stepped near the display, the air went fractionally thin. Not thinner in the lungs, thinner where ideas breathe. I reached up without meaning to and traced the line through the coronas to the far side of the ring. And I realized why the room had felt like a chapel. The scar had a liturgy. The angle it entered with, the angle it exited with, the distances it refused to cross, these were ratios I'd seen once in a different context, on a printout from an Antarctic gravimetry drill that had nothing to do with space. Years ago, I'd been flown to the ice for what I was told was instrument rehabilitation. They had a neutrino array under the shelf, and the optical heads kept blinding themselves. I was supposed to nurse them back to reason. We never found the software bug because it wasn't in code. It was in the ice. Pendulum anomalies down there that made gyros behave like tired ballerinas. A glacial undersong that made lasers stutter. We laughed about it. We blamed thermal shear. But the distances where the array flinched were the same as the scar's rhythm through the halo. And the gravity that wasn't gravity below the ice had a map that looked like this. Lines too straight to be natural, too sonic to be structure. I told the man that the galaxy's wound felt like it had been drawn by the same hand that underlined something beneath Antarctica. He nodded like I'd paid a debt and cued a different set of images. You remember those ancient rumors about ruins under the ice, the city with the right angles and the stone that looked milled? I never believed the architectural part. Stone doesn't keep secrets, snow does. But the next set of frames weren't stone. They were absence mapped by sound. Someone had drilled a lattice under the shelf and taught the ice to say the shape behind it. The shape was not a city. It was a path, a corridor through density. They showed me seismic readouts that looked like someone had taken a ruler through bedrock. They showed me ROIs that never shifted despite a decade of shelf movement. They showed me an Area 51 experiment from the 90s that tested quantum vacuum stress relief, their phrase, not mine, by pumping microwaves into casings that had never known a frequency like that and measuring the small, illegal changes in inertia. They never admitted it, but I could hear Casimir rustling under their breath. The test masses had nuzzled toward the void like animals who know the field better than we do. The numbers were wrong in the same way the ice was wrong and the galaxy now was wrong. "The Atlas object," the man said finally, and he said it like it was both a proper noun and a sin. "Doesn't orbit. It travels. We think it plows. Through." He let that hang. "You can't plow through a galaxy," I said, "because sometimes you have to say the stupidest thing in the room to hear the truth ring." "You can," he said, "if you're not a thing." He meant a field. He meant a pressure in what we think is nothing, a scar laid into the grain of space-time like a thumb across wet clay before it dried. They took me to the ice. It's never the cold that gets you. It's the dryness, the way your skin becomes a paper you're writing on by living. The sky there isn't blue. It's a tin color from old dishes. The base they flew me to wasn't on any of the maps we saw as kids when we learned where penguins lived. They brought me into a room with a floor made for feet that didn't mind tinkling. Air in there has the quality of bells. They lowered me by a wire into a shaft they'd milked warm with downhole heaters. The walls were striated with time, 1,000 winters in close parade. I didn't descend, not really. Something in me rose. At 470 meters, the ice began to carry. You could feel it, not sound through bone like a drill, meaning through mind like a half-remembered hymn. The corridor the seismic had drawn was off to the east. It was narrow. It was empty of ice, though ice should have been there. It was as if a long object had traveled once, long ago, and the ice respected the memory enough to never fill the space again. When the beam hit the far side, it didn't scatter. It made a single, careful tone. I heard that same tone in the lab the night the galaxy hummed. The man with the no-region voice spoke into my ear. He asked if the tone said anything to me. Words are a bad technology for some feelings, but I tried. I told him it felt like a yes that didn't need a question. We deployed an instrument the size of my hand and dumber than a moth, a microwave emitter with a geometry stolen from the old Area 51 experiment logs and polished by someone who knew more about zero-point fields than he should. We rotated its face toward the corridor and turned it on. I did not see a beam. I saw a refusal. The space ahead of me chose not to accept the light the way a mouth chooses not to accept a spoon. Then it relented. And when it did, the scar in the galaxy moved inside my head. I don't know how to tell you what I saw without sounding like the kind of person who writes books that live on that shelf at the bookstore no one visits sober. But I promised myself I wouldn't do this if I couldn't do it with honesty. So here it is. I saw 2 points in space, one in the ice and one in the galaxy, become the same point in meaning. They did not join. They remembered. The corridor under Antarctica wasn't a tunnel. It was a preserved gesture. The galaxy's scar wasn't damage. It was an echo left by something that moved once with purpose, the way a groove in wood remembers the hand that carved it. The Atlas object, whatever it is, had traveled along a direction we don't have a name for, and it left a kindness for us. A pressure that aligned when we asked properly. The microwave unit sang, and the corridor answered, and the galaxy listened. They say quantum theory is about probabilities and ghosts of decisions. This wasn't that. This was the feeling you get when you put your palm against the window of a train and feel the whole countryside agree to slide. The train still moves, but you understand something the tracks forgot to mention. The man told me to step forward. I didn't step. I leaned, as if you lean toward a person who is about to whisper their name to you in a crowd. The air before me felt like the lid of a chest right before your fingers tell you whether the wood is warm or dead. I thought of the old rites in quiet churches, the smell of candle and stone. I thought of dark matter maps like gauze around galaxies and wondered if the gauze has a weave. When my glove pressed into the corridor, the tone became 2 tones, one tight and one so deep I only heard it in my knees. The display on the unit changed, not by numbers but by shape. It drew a line, a straight line, and my stomach fell because I knew exactly where it was pointing. Not at the galaxy in the display downstairs, beyond it, past the ring, past the clean bruise. Into a region the catalogs keep as background, because no one has the time to catalog emptiness. The line pointed where the Atlas projections, those ancient, whispered impact lines, would carry you if you plotted them in the right kind of space. Not the local one with rocks and comets, but the quiet one where everything that isn't already a thing waits for a name. I asked the man with the no-region voice if this was an invitation. He said he didn't think so. He thought it was a warning in the form of a courtesy. He said maybe the universe leaves notes for beings who insist on chiseling corridors through ice and asking questions with microwave throats. I asked him why they called it Atlas. He said because it carries. We returned to the States after a week of making the corridor sing and the galaxy answer. Or not answer, allow. Subtle difference. When I got back, the night sky felt like a lid. The lab's fluorescence smelled like boiled white. The pipeline tolerated me. The anomalies folder ate and ate. I worked. I slept badly. And then the memo came from above with a guidance I understood too quickly. All mention of the scar would be suppressed as non-astrophysical. The official story would never require a human to hold their breath. I tried to live with that. I tried to be the person I was trained to be, a careful hand in a silent room. I told myself this was for the good. Don't tell people about corridors that teach ice to remember. Don't tell them that a James Webb Telescope discovery might be a finger laid gently across a galaxy's mouth. People have a hard enough time with hurricanes and rent. Then the dreams came. In the dream, I'm in the control room. The monitors are off, but they're as bright as seas under moonlight. The line hangs in the air like a drawn string. It vibrates, not as metal does, but as a promise held too long. I walk to it. I say the stupid thing again because sometimes you have to be the stupid one to be a human one. You can't plow through a galaxy. And the line hums in a tone that tastes like copper, and I know two things at once. First, that something did. Second, that it didn't hurt the galaxy to be crossed. It hurt us to see it, not because harm came, but because scale came. The kind you don't fit inside a sentence. I started collecting small treasons. I saved metadata that wasn't mine to save. I printed a seismic map and folded it into the bottom of a cereal box. I wrote, on physical paper, ratios from the halo entrance and exit and locked them in a safe my landlord thinks holds a gun. I drove to the lake alone and spoke them out loud to see if the air would change. It did. How wind changes when the pressure drops before rain. I told no one. Except now I'm telling you. Because 2 nights ago, I woke with the tone in my bones. And I knew, not guessed, not feared, knew, that the corridor under the ice had shifted. It hadn't moved location. It had moved intention. The same instrument geometry that made it sing would now turn it away. The line had tilted. The corridor no longer pointed past the ring into the kindly empty. It pointed at home. Not here. Home. Not Earth, the rock. Home, the desire. It pointed toward the densest arrangement of meaning it could find in our local weave. We are a bright knot, friend. We hum, we ask, we listen. We build secret bases in Antarctica and pretend we don't. We build Area 51 experiments and pretend they were jokes. We fly mirrors to L2 and call the first dark filaments discoveries, like we didn't know they were always there in the way children know a parent's breath before they learn the word parent. We are a sound in the ice, the line heard. I checked the private patch on a terminal no one monitors without my password. I pointed an old algorithm at a quiet field and told it to forget how it had been trained to doubt. It returned a picture that wasn't a picture, a refusal that wasn't a darkness. The scar is in 3 places now: the ringed galaxy, a dwarf cluster near it, and a smear of sky with no catalog number and too much patience. The angles are new. The corridor's courtesy is gone. You don't change maps when you're done traveling. You change maps when you think you know the way. Maybe this is the part where you expect me to say we're in danger. That an asteroid atlas impact line is going to solder our sky. Maybe you want me to say the atlas object is a weapon. I don't think it is. I think it's a habit. I think it's an old route set long before we learned to peel meaning off microwaves and lay it along ice. I think it moves not to find us, but to complete itself. We happen to be in the way a cathedral happens to stand in the way of light at noon. The light still arrives, and the stones learn a new language. I made this choice when I asked you to meet me here, at this ridiculous diner with a jukebox that never plays the song you buy and a waitress who calls both of us honey as if we'd been married long enough to stop asking what that means. I'm confessing because secrets like this don't belong to rooms. They belong to people who can tell the difference between fear and awe. The guidance will come down. It will tell us to call everything an artifact. It will tell us to say the James Webb Telescope discovery was a glitch. It will tell us there was no Antarctica secret base, no Area 51 experiment, no corridor, no tone at the edge of hearing. It will tell us to stop using the phrase asteroid atlas impact because it makes the wrong kind of people listen. And it will ask us to sleep. I am asking you not to. I am asking you to hold the shape in your head the way the ice held the corridor. Not as a thing, but as a kindness. Because if a field can plow a scar across a galaxy and leave the galaxy singing, if a line can tilt and point toward home in the language of meaning, then we are already a part of something that knows the route. Maybe the danger isn't that Atlas is coming. Maybe the danger is that we forget to answer with the right sort of silence when it does, the kind that hears, the kind that hums back. When you leave here, don't look up. The sky doesn't need witnesses the way courts do. Instead, listen. You'll hear it in the break between air conditioner cycles, in the not sound of your car coasting, in the way your pulse pauses before the next decision. You'll hear the corridor in anything that agrees to be straight for a moment in a crooked world. They told us a scar across a galaxy is an illusion of processing. They told us the ice is only ice. They told us fields are math, and that asking them to sing is superstition wearing a lab coat. They told us to stop assigning intention to the universe. They were wrong about only one thing. Intention isn't the universe's. It's ours. And the universe is old enough to remember. If you need a last sentence to trust, take this one. When I placed my hand against the corridor, before the numbers learned to behave, before the memos and the badges and the denials, the tone inside my bones sounded like an answer to a question I didn't know I'd asked. It said very quietly in a language older than light, "We are already in the same room."